Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Al-Hijr, Chapter 15. We will cover verses 78 to 87. These are the references, and this is our contact. Recap so far. The Quran is a complete evidence-based book of guidance. Events in the human world follow known laws and values. The law of requital ensures every human deed has an outcome. The Quran, that is the Arabic text, is preserved and protected for all times. There are enough resources for sustenance kept in the planet for all times for mankind. Their equitable distribution is the responsibility of men in power. Competitiveness is kept within us and is meant to be directed towards doing solid deeds. Everything in the world is created from water. Life and death follow Allah's laws, and these are kept out with the control of human hands, for example, physical death. Those who tread on the path of the Quran see tangible benefits as described in various verses. Their developed self becomes evidence of their being on Sirat al-Mustaqim. The model of Ibrahim is presented to be kept in mind. He followed the way of Allah and benefited both in this life and achieved the successes of the life of the hereafter. The people of Lut became destroyed due to their evil deeds. This cut short their life in this world. There is nothing for them in the hereafter. Lut and Mu'mineen escaped this destruction under the guidance of Allah. So the last 2 points were covered in those presentations, which we did not discuss any further. So if there are any points, we can discuss those today. Now let us look at the first 2 verses for today's presentation, 78 and 79. Injustice leads to destructive outcome. Another historical example is given over here. وَإِنْ كَانَ أَصْحَابُ الْأَيْكَةِ لَا ظَالِمِينَ فَانْتَقَمْنَا مِنْهُمْ وَإِنَّهُمْ لَا بِإِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ. And similarly, the people of Al-Aika. Now, this term means inhabitants of dense forests, i.e. people of Median tribe. This is in reference to Hazrat Shuaib, the messenger of Allah. Were also very rebellious, so we punish them too for their rebelliousness, and both these habitations, i.e. towns of the people of Lut and the people of Median, are found on the main route. So over here, Quran has said that like the people of Lut, these people of Al-Aika also misbehaved. They did not follow Allah's laws and transgressed and were rebellious, and as a consequence, they were also destroyed. And their ruins, the ruins of their habitations, these are lying on the main route on which people from Mecca used to go around doing their business. Verses 78, 79, functioning of the law of requital includes study of the historical signs. The Quran helps in the study of human history and points to the causes which lead to the rise and fall of previous nations. By stating that these people were zalimeen, it points to the core of the problem. And over here I have quoted this verse. وَإِلَى مَدْيَنَ أَخَاهُمْ شُعَيْبًا قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مَا لَكُم مِّنْ إِلَٰهٍ غَيْرُهُ قَدْ جَاءَتْكُم بَيِّنَاتٌ مِّن رَّبِّكُمْ فَأَوْفُوا الْكَيْلَ وَالْمِيزَانَ وَلْتَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ وَلَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ بَعْدَ إِصْلَاحِهَا ذَلِكُمْ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنتُم مُّؤْمِنِينَ. So this verse summarizes our word today. What it says is that Shoaib was sent to people of Madian, and he was one of them, Akhahum. He was one of their brethren. Qala ya qawmi ibudullaha ma lakum min ilahin ghayruhu. What he said, the messenger Shoaib told the people that you should follow Allah's law, Abdullah, and do not have any other God other than Allah. Qad ja'atkum bayyinatum min rabbikum, and the bayyan, the signs have come from Rabb, from their Rabb. Fa'awful kaila wal mizana, that kaila and mizana, that give a precise measure and do not do any wrong in doing the balance. So these two, that is in business, deal honestly and truthfully. Wala tabkhasun nasa ashyahum, and when you give things to people, you should be very truthful and give them the precisely what you have agreed with them. Wala tufsidu fil ard, and if you don't do that, then that means you're doing fasad, you're creating chaos and imbalance in the world. Bada islaha, and that is an important term over here, that if world is going okay at a certain point in time, if people come and destroy that balance, that also is counted as facade. And this is, we can see happening in our world of today, that even those nations which were doing fine and they were benefiting from the resources of the earth, they have also gone into decline and they are doing the worst things now. Zalikum khairul lakum in kuntum mu'minin. And ideally, you should be mu'minin. And that is your responsibility, that you should do good. So there is a lot in this verse. We can have a look in our own time. The root of la zalimin is zulm, which means unjustified intervention in someone else's possession, not letting something be at its rightful place, darkness by exceeding the limit, displacing something, snatching away something by force, giving less than the right of someone, not paying rightful due, keeping darkness where there should be light. Very important point, keeping darkness where there should be light, law breaking, exploiting the work of others. It's a very powerful term, and Quran has used it frequently for injustice in the world. We need to look at those verses where the term zalimin has appeared in the Quran. This is a plural term, zalimin. Allah himself has declared that the system of the universe is designed so that wahum la yuslamun. If you remember famous verse 45:22, where Quran says wahum la yuzlamun, that the word universe is created in a way that nobody can be treated unjustly. There is absolutely no question of injustice to anyone, and human beings also need to follow that course in life. Otherwise, there will be chaos and conflicts. This means that if there is injustice anywhere in the world, it is against the natural order of things and is bound to lead to negative effects. This also means that those on haqq not only recognize zulm in all its forms, that is manifest and hidden, but they strive to confront it and establish the system of deen. The Quran has said, لِيُحِقَّ الْحَقَّ وَيُبْطَلَ الْبَاطِلَ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُجْرِمُونَ. That the Quran is sent so that the haqq becomes haqq and batil is declared as batil, so that people find out that it is batil, it is false, it is wrong, it is injustice. Even if those criminals who follow batil, they might hate it. So that haqq manifests as haqq and batil becomes exposed, even if criminals hate being exposed. Of course, criminals, they do wrong because they want to hide it, and then they hide it. And there is a complete system of secrecy, which is, we can see, established in the world, where people who are criminals, they try to hide all their crimes. Next to verses 80-81, another example from history, people knowingly ignore the signs of Allah. Here, Quran given another example. In fact, it is Al-Hijr, and on which this surah has been named. وَلَقَدْ كَذَّبَ أَصْحَابُ الْحِجْرِ الْمُرْسَلِينَ وَآتَيْنَاهُمْ آيَاتِنَا فَكَانُوا عَنْهَا مُعْرِضِينَ. And the people of Al-Hijr, i.e. the nation of Thamud, also falsified the message of their messengers. We had given them clear laws, but they remained in rebellion to these. They were a very powerful nation. So over here, Quran has referred to them like Ashab al-Eka and of course, nation of Lut. And let us look at some more details. Process of following the guidance of Allah. These stories of former nations are reiterated with the aim to inform Rasulullah and the companions, and of course now us, that the struggle between haqq and batil, which they are facing, is not something new. This has been happening like this from the beginning, but there is nothing to be fearful about regarding this, because the ultimate victory is always of al-haqq. And that is an important point of instruction for us, that ultimate victory is of al-haqq. If we are absolutely convinced that our path is of al-haqq, we should continue following it and then see that the results will start falling in place. And verse 773 sums it up. And over here, if we see that the people of Thamud, they had Hazrat Saleh sent as messenger to them. And he was also one of them. Bala Samudan akhahum salihan qala ya qawm ibudullaha ma lakum min ilahin ghayruhu qad ja'atkum bayyinatum min rabbikum. Up to this point, this verse has exactly the same points as was covered in the case of Messenger Shuaib. Hazihi naqatallahi lakum ayatun فَذَرُوهَا تَأْكُلُ فِي أَرْضِ اللَّهِ وَلَا تَمَسُّوهَا بِسُوءٍ يَأْخُذْكُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. So over here, what happened was that he was telling his people that you should follow Allah's laws, and they refused to follow that. But ultimately, they came to some agreement. And Hazrat Saleh said that this is the she-camel, who is the creation of Allah, and let her go around wherever she wishes in the land. Because the rich people had occupied the land and they were depriving the poor from using the land. And as a result, they had injustice in the land. And over here, then they agreed that let the she-camel go around in the land of Allah. And note the term Ardallah, that is, the land belongs to Allah. Nobody owns the land. And it is a fact. When we die, we leave everything behind. So over here, what Quran says is that since they started exploiting the resources of the earth, and only few hands started to accumulate, as a result, the others are deprived. So as a result of that, so this is a very major crime which people commit. Besuin fayakhzukum azabun alim, and as a result, they were punished. So these are the points which we should keep it in mind, that in the previous verse, what Hazrat Shoaib said was that don't do wrong in business. Over here, it is the distribution of Earth's resources. Next is, in this struggle, the program used to be that the messenger of Allah would communicate the message of Allah only to his own people. Out of them, whichever righteous people accepted this message, they were included in his Jamaat. Ultimately, such a point would come when it would become clear that the remainder of the people will not accept the message, in fact, would go to any extreme to oppose it. So this is the process which was followed, and we are following the same process. First, we have come to the Quran, then we understood it ourselves by reading the Quran and the books by Allama Pervez, and of course, a lot of other books. And through discussion, we came to this conclusion that Quran is for us. And then we have come together, and now we are in the second stage of removing the differences, which more or less we have removed. And we are in a process of strengthening our own self. So this is the process which is followed, and the messengers also followed the same process. At this juncture, the messenger used to migrate with his Jamaat to another such location, which was more favorable for his mission. This also used to be a sign for the severing of relations with this nation. Of course, in today's world, the situation is different. Now we have certain means of communication, like using this platform. So we can come together on this platform and enhance our understanding. And of course, in our own time, then we can practice the permanent values. By stating Fakanu an Hamuridin, they are moving away or avoiding it. Because those people who do not like the Quran, they are going to move away. And we see that. There are a lot of people who listen to the Quran and then they say it is not for us, either through their conduct and behavior, or some of them even openly state that. This is a great sign for our teaching and training about the human psyche. So if people don't want it, that is their choice. We should not complain about it. We should not have any ill feelings about it. And we should move away and concentrate on the work which we have in hand by reading the Quran and by studying it. If people do not show any interest in the Quranic value system, then there is no point in keeping our expectations high about them. It simply means that they are not interested in the pure Quran as a system of deen. We have gone through some of these points previously as well. Verses 82 to 84, our priorities need to be right. وَقَانُوا يَنْحِتُونَ مِنَ الْجِبَالِ بُيُوتًا آمِنِينَ فَأَخَذَتْهُمُ السِّيحَةُ مُصْبِحِينَ فَمَا أَغْنَىٰ عَنْهُمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. Over here, in the second case, that is about the people of Thamud, the Quran has gone in slightly more details, just like the people of Lut. They used to carve the mountains to make their homes, so that in these homes, like castles, they could remain secure. Very interesting. The people, they try to take protection of the physical means of life. But even these secure castles of theirs could not save them from the punishment of Allah. As soon as dawn arrived, the punishment gripped them with a mighty, devastating blast, and whatever they had built for themselves with their endeavors was of no use to them. Now, I've gone through some more details about these three verses, 82, 84. We need to set our priorities right in this finite existence on the planet. The Quran is not against the building of big structures and buildings, but it is against the exploitation of human beings when the priority is given to erecting these structures and monuments. The basic principle given is to work for that which is good for mankind, not aimless skyscrapers in the foundations of which is poured the blood of human beings. And we see it all around. For example, there is the World Cup coming up in Qatar. And just see that the stadiums which are built over there and all the foreign labor, them which is used over there by paying them the minimum. In another, it is made clear, وَتَنْحِتُونَ مِنَ الْجِبَالِ بُيُوتًا فَارِهِينَ. So there the Quran says that not only that you build these, but you take a lot of pride in that, because that becomes the focus of your attention, as if you are going to live in this life forever, as if you own the planet, taking pride in big structures carved out of mountains. So Quran puts a lot of emphasis on human psyche behind what they do, even in the physical world. So that is where we should concentrate and look at our own psyche as well, that how it gets transformed in the light of the Quran. Another important value noted here is that these structures may appear very strong, i.e. representing the powerful nations, but these do not provide security under the law of Allah. In fact, these distract us from the higher purpose of life, and we start to feel as if we are going to stay in this life forever. And this is, I've seen this psychology working behind the minds of these people, and where they are quite convinced that whatever they are possessing, it is never going to go away. And if they have become very rich, they are never going to go poor. And they make full effort to acquire that power so that they can accumulate as much as possible. And once they accumulate for themselves, then they start thinking of their grandchildren and grandchildren, and those kind of a thoughts start coming into their mind. And this is an unbridled intellect. This is how it is supposed to behave. Whatever we do in this life, we need to keep in mind that our stay here is finite and there is another life awaiting us after our death. And hereafter doesn't come into this kind of a behavior. Because such people gradually become totally incognizant of the consequences of their evil deeds and are intoxicated by their power, when the results of their evil deeds finally catch up with them, then they are surprised. This destruction appears before them unexpectedly and brings an end to their reign of power. And at that time, if we are around, we should never have any sympathy for them. This is something which we should always keep it in mind, and that was covered in my previous presentation. Whatever great they had done goes to waste, and there is nothing in the balance of Allah which has any value. No developed self, hence leaving this life empty-handed. And we can look at this verse 105 of chapter 18. Now next, 85, 86, discover the purpose of human creation. وَمَا خَلَقْنَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ وَإِنَّ السَّاعَةَ لَآتِيَاتٌ فَاصْفَحِ الصَّفْحَ الْجَمِيلَ إِنَّ رَبَّكَ هُوَ الْخَلَّاقُ الْعَلِيمُ. O Rasool, you have seen how the evil deeds of former nations destroyed them. The fact is that this system of the universe, which is as-samawati wal-ard, has been created for this very purpose, that it keeps establishing concrete constructive results. Destructive forces cannot fit into the program of the universe, hence can never be successful. Therefore, whatever happened to those nations, the same will happen to the nation you are addressing, and same will happen to the nations around us. So that is something we should keep it in mind. If we feel low at any time, we should go back to these presentations, we should go back to these verses and reassure ourselves. That decisive revolution of which they are being warned will surely come, so do not squabble with them. So there is no point in having an argument with them or becoming emotional. The thing is that the law of requital wants us to be very patient, steadfast, and follow our path. Whatever amount of work in disseminating the message of Haqq was necessary, it has been done. Dissociating yourself from them in an extremely amicable manner, you should remain engaged in completion of your program. This is a very interesting part of this verse, where Quran says, فَأَصْفَحِ الصَّفْحَ الْجَمِيلَ. that if you have to move away from them, because once a Jamaat starts forming, a platform becomes available where we can come together and discuss these things, then we should not really worry ourselves with what is happening elsewhere. Then we should concentrate our efforts on strengthening ourselves, which you have already created through our Iman. All of this is being stated from that Rabb of yours who has created this whole system of the universe, and he knows what the consequences are of what kinds of efforts and deeds. Great message of hope for us in these two verses 85, 86. Here Allah has drawn our attention to a few concrete facts. Firstly, never to think that our efforts on this path will go wasted. These are producing effects which are not visible in the initial stages. We have gone through this aspect previously as well, and there is no harm reiterating it, that through our thoughts do come with so much Iblisi system well established around us, where we might think that we are doing nothing. Actually, when we are strengthening ourselves and also sharing Allah's message together, that is a sign of being on the right path. And what we need is to remain steadfast and always think that the good which we are doing, its effects are being created. They are just not visible at this present stage. Secondly, the accumulated results of human positive efforts culminate in their manifestation at a future time, which may be around the corner. So do not give up. Giving up, why I put down over here is that human thoughts, negative thoughts do appear, because that's the way our brain is designed and structured. So when those come, we have to counter them. And that countering, how effective we counter them, that is where the strength of our self lies. And that is how our self becomes stronger. So week to week, our self will keep becoming stronger and stronger because we will remain steadfast on this path. Thirdly, never be frustrated with those who give up or who are not attracted towards this message, or who oppose it. So it's not a game of numbers that how many people are watching these presentations or how many people are on this platform and who are leaving the platform, abandoning it, not interested, which is fine. They are making their own choice. The fact is none of us is going to be in this world forever. At least we are making our best, whatever resources we have at this point in time, and with all the Iblisi system all around us, this is the best we can do at this point in time. When we are absolutely sure about the direction of our travel, we never become distracted. And when we are traveling towards our destination, we do not waste our valuable time. Now, this is a good example from our daily life. If we are going from one town to another town, and we have boarded the right bus or the right train, and someone comes to us that you may be on the wrong bus or train, we will very strongly say, no, I know what I'm doing and I'm on the right bus or the right train. And of course, that is a physical aspect of life. But over here again, we should be fully convinced and check our path again and again in the light of the Quran, that we are on the right path and our self is becoming stronger. And that is what the conviction of our Iman means. And then solid deeds, through solid deeds, whatever we can afford, whatever we can do, we strengthen it on every weekly or weekly basis. Part of the process of our self-development is to remain calm, well-mannered, knowledgeable, wise, fully conscious, perceptive, focused, remain united at the level of our hearts and minds. One verse sums it well for us. Wasbir, that is, stay steadfast, be sure that you are on the right path. Alama yakuluna, whatever others say, just ignore them. Those who do not want to follow this path, they will come and say, what have you done? What is your output? And interesting is, a lot of these people who say like that, they are not willing to join this path. Wahjurhum hajran jamila, and Quran says, leave them amicably. Don't argue with them. Just tell them that my path is for me and your path is for you, and the time will tell who was on the right path. Remain steadfast, ignore their opinions, and in fact, ignoring their opinions and not letting those affect ourselves is part or a sign or a manifestation of a strong self. And that is the self of a moment that he ignores. He is absolutely 100% sure that his path or her path is the right one. And move away amicably with firm Iman in own selected path of life. Because those who are on this path, we check it with with the Quranic value system. We don't say at our own and assume that I am on the right path. We check it up with the Quran because Quran has clearly defined salih deeds and it has clearly defined the signs of Iman. There are no shortcuts on this path of Rububiyyat, i.e. Deen requires a certain standard of our self-development, and unless we reach it collectively, the system of Deen will not emerge tangibly. The path of Deen keeps getting illuminated as we keep advancing on this path, as the Quran has highlighted. Yawma taral mu'minina wal mu'minate yas'a nuruhum baina aydihim wa biimanihim. We can look at the rest of this verse as well. Over here, what Quran says is that a period, an era will come where mu'mineen and mu'minat, their light, which they have acquired themselves, of course, that is the Quran, Nuruhum, Allah's Nur is His book, and that will keep multiplying, that will keep increasing, baina aydihim wa biimanihim, that is in front of them on their right hands, and that is the Quranic term, that they will themselves know that their light is illuminating their path ahead. So it is not something which is intangible or abstract or otherworldly. It is manifesting right in this life. By stating Inna Rabbaka huwal khallaqul alim, three attributes are interlinked here. That is Rabb, Khallaq, and Alim. We need to be creative and knowledgeable for the system of Rububiyyat. They're beautifully summed up in this verse. Those most refined aspects of human eminence need to be understood, acquired, and manifested, which then help turn us into wa innaka la ala khulqin al-azim. Now, this verse is used for the character of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it is equally applicable to those who are coming later on and are following the path of the Quran. That a great character develops, a great strength develops within them, so that they are able to understand the system of Deen and then come together and work for it. Verse 1587, why does history repeat itself? I kept this verse separate because I thought there are some points in this verse which need a bit more elaboration. وَلَقَدْ أَتَيْنَاكَ سَبْعًا مِنَ الْمَثَانِي وَالْقُرْآنِ الْعَظِيمِ. We have provided you with knowledge of numerous events from this history which repeats itself, and together with this have bestowed the supreme Quran, which contains within it those principles according to which the decisions about the life and death of nations are made. There are enough signs in our life and the world around us to draw benefits. There are two aspects on which we need to reflect. Firstly, signs in the outer world, i.e. in the heavens and the earth, and secondly, an inner world of our own psyche, through which we try to make sense of our own life and the world around us. Both these are interlinked, and we simply cannot disregard these during our finite life. If we ignore the needs of the world of the psyche, then essentially we live an unexamined life. That is, then we are living at an animalistic level, i.e. life at an animalistic life. Because we think that once our brain is dead, we are dead and there is nothing in the hereafter. The Quran here points to this aspect, that its guidance helps to bring out the best through reiteration and cross-referencing. History only repeats itself if we allow it to repeat itself. Over here, the Quran says that we have given you these signs or verses which are being repeated, or similar ones. It is a waste of human time and effort at a mega scale to let history repeat itself. We have heard this phrase that history repeats itself, which is a fact. If we do not follow the Quran, then history will repeat itself because we will keep making the same mistakes again and again. We will keep doing the same injustice which previous nations did. We need education, teaching, and training to enhance our understanding for the whole of mankind, i.e. on a global scale. So our effort is not to let the history repeat itself, because life is about evolving higher and higher, going further in life. If we are going cyclically, going around in circles, then we don't achieve anything. If we keep making the same mistakes, then essentially we are going around the same point again and again. Both these segments of our world are there to help us use our cognitive faculties to develop our rational thought and reasoning prowess. However, the important part is that if we spend all our efforts at a lower level and live in a world full of conflicts and fear, then we will waste our energies and potentials in surviving in such an environment and the higher eminent life will remain beyond our reach. We will not even know about that eminent life, that if there is, we could live a better life. Without the Quran, we will not know that if we can live a better life than where we are in the world. Because most of the human beings, they follow, they are part of the crowd and they conform with the rich and the powerful. Hence, it is important that we make efforts to change the world's environment so that conducive circumstances are created which help to have more self-possessing eminence, and future generations are presented with a choice to reach those loftiest heights which are presently reserved for the selected few. Over here, we should keep it in mind that when I put down this comment, it is primarily for the capitalist system, because the loftiest heights, we will only know them, and we know them through our own learning of the Quran. But unless the system of deen is established and the Quran is taught academically, and the children are educated and trained, then they will understand what these loftiest heights are. The Quran being al-Azim, the root is azam, which means basically this refers to the bones in the body, because bones are the ones on which the structure of the body is established. Deals with the finest aspects of human cognitive processes and teaches to get the best out of these faculties which are kept there to be explored. Presently, it all appears to be utopian, but merely thinking of this places this within the realm of possibilities. Because if we think about something, then we are going to do something about it. And Quran has told us that whatever is in the Quran, it is all possible. It is within the potentials of human beings. Those potentials have been kept within us. And if we do not use those potentials for that, then those potentials will remain dead within us and they will never be manifested. After all, the positives which we as mankind have achieved so far were considered beyond our reach a few hundred years ago. We have seen that how the face of the earth has been changed in terms of technology, and all these potentials were there, but human beings discovered them in the last few hundred years. As a consequence of our evolutionary advancement, we have at least recognized those forces which are hampering our progress. Whatever is in the Quran is placed within our reach. So when Quran says Quran al-Azim, it means that Quran has all those aspects right at the fundamental level for which are kept within human beings, from which they can bring out new life out of the death of created by the man-made systems. Now over here, what I've done is I've added 2 slides from this book, The Making of Humanity by Robert Briffault, who has put down a lot of important points in terms of evolutionary progress of mankind. He has tried to trace it from since the time from where the human history exists. And these points I thought are very interesting, because since he's thinking on those lines, he's trying to say that mankind has yet to get best out of them. Of course, he's not mentioning anything about the life of the hereafter. But he did write a chapter on Muslim contributions intellectually towards this process of making of humanity. And he says that Christian West has been extremely unjust to that part which was lived by Muslims and which was created by Muslims intellectually. It is the nature of a man's impression of the world about him which determines the play of motive. A man's conduct depends upon extra-rational instinct, emotions, desires. But these are themselves in turn determined by his view, his estimate of the world he lives in, by his beliefs, his opinions. So our beliefs and opinions are the ones which are formed on the way we live our life and the way we draw all the data through our perceptions. Makes a lot of difference. And we have seen it, if people have false beliefs, then those lead to then those affect their conduct as well. And that impression, the range and complexion of his perception is a matter of intellectual development of knowledge. What the word is to him, what determines his appetites and desires, is the product of his intellectual reach and outlook. So all emphasis, he says, wherever human beings thought rationally, they made a difference. Where they did not, then it could evidently be seen that they were lagging behind and they were suffering from inertia. The more perfect the perception, the truer the belief, because it was based on data. If we have a wrong perception, a wrong belief system, then of course our conviction will be very weak, and as a result, that will affect our life as well. The more perfect the desire, the more adapted the conduct. Conduct depends upon desire, feeling, emotion, but desire, feeling, emotion depend in turn upon the nature of perception. It's very nicely he has linked it between the two aspects of human cognitive makeup. Because the way we think, and that is where the Quran is also putting a lot of emphasis, that is, the Quran, for example, says, Afala taqilun, that you should use your intellect, bring the intellect within the confines of the values of the Quranic value system. And then you will see that how your inner self changes. Reform the word and your own reform will take care of itself. Here he made a very pertinent point. He said that a lot of time people say that individuals should change. He says, no, don't think like that. Individuals have a very little role to play in a world in which they land up not by choice. And they find that world around them and they try to conform to it because they have to make a living. So people who are at the helm of affairs, they should think of reforming the world. And if we see, this is what Quran also says, because Quran is, for example, addressing Pharaoh, the rich people, the powerful people, those who are malawlazina, those who had the means of sustenance in their control. And that is why the nation get destroyed, because these people at the top are the ones who create that man-device system. Men are the product of the kind of the world they live in. So if a certain factory is producing a certain kind of people and they are not even given the message, how are they going to change their choices? They just become victim of it, of the kind of the world which it in fact is, of the relations which actually obtain in it between man and man, and of the ideas and values which correspond to the actual world. So it is important that we study the world around us and see that where it has gone wrong and what is the value system is being followed and how does it differ from the permanent values of the Quran. And that helps us to understand that how the transition will take place from this system towards the system of Deen. Few more excerpts from the making of humanity. The foremost factor in that development is precisely the perception of that human evolution which we have been considering. So he is talking a lot about the human evolution, that when human beings arrived here and how their thought process evolved and where we are in the 20th century, because he's talking about the last century, and where we are. And in his view, we haven't made much progress from the time we landed up on this earth, and from then to this, what has happened is that human beings have not been able to utilize all their potentials which they had, and they have spent a lot of time in fighting with each other. As we have noted, that perception of the life of the human race as a ceaseless growth rising from animality and savagery to our present state. And he goes through it beautifully and through examples. He said that like the Roman Empire and then the Muslim Empire and then the Christian West and all these things, he goes through and analyzes them based on values. Impelled onward by an irresistible natural power, ruled by definite and indeflectible laws which nothing can evade and which can be relied upon to operate as the law which governs the course of the planets, is a new conception. So he said they have finally discovered that there are laws controlling their own rise and fall as well. Because if human beings do not think that they are just left alone and there are no laws controlling them, then they keep making the same mistakes again and again. And as a result, they don't go forward. They do not evolve further. They might be evolving in terms of more technology and more conveniences, but intellectually, they are not going forward because they are facing the same problems century after century. The same conflicts, same bloodshed, same fear is still existing. And as we are but the resultant of all past generations, and this is beautifully sums up that where we are sum total of what has gone before us. Exactly, he of course doesn't know about the law of requital, definitely, but he does talk of causation. So too are we the makers of the future evolution of the race, as the function of the past was to make us what we are. So the future is dependent upon our being and doing. So he's very assertive, very clear on this, that what we are doing today, we are actually sowing the seeds of our future, our tomorrow. And this is something very important, because the way he's analyzed this, there's a lot more in this book. And I've got a PDF version. I can share it on our seminar group. And we can selectively go through it and read some of these paragraphs ourselves. There's a lot more. I've just taken the gist of it. The law by which that great natural process is actually governed only takes account of the existing generation as a stepping stone to future evolution. That evolution is the all-important object to which all others are subordinate. The present is of no significance except as the seed, the determinant of what is to come. The present is constantly being sacrificed to the future. Each successive moment is subservient to the process of which it is but a transient phase. So this is very interestingly, he has summed up that where we are today, we are sowing the seeds of tomorrow. And our effort should be that we sow the right kind of a seed if we want to have a better future. And he is very clear on this, that we haven't significantly moved forward. Another interesting comment which he has made is that if we look around the world, we see human beings, but we still see human beings who have the same mentality as of the Stone Age, as of the age of ignorance, as of the age of living in the caves. And of course, he also talks about the slavery of women, and of course, the other slavery as well, intellectual slavery. So it's quite a comprehensive analysis where humanity is in 20th century. And I don't think we have moved much ahead from the last century. With that, I come to the end of this presentation. Thanks for your time and for sharing this presentation.